Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. We're super excited to be hosting a discussion around the AVL design process. We're glad you were able to join us today. I want to introduce you to a few of the guys from the team here at Clark. We've got Paul Green. He's our creative director. He's kind of in charge of everything from the visual aesthetics for most of our projects. And we also got Peter Fitton. He's one of our senior design consultants, touches just about every one of our projects, from the higher level across all platforms, audio, video, lighting, and even, just the basic layouts of spaces. Some of what we want to talk about today is obviously the audio, video, lighting portion of what we do. That's a big part of what we do. But when we're diving into these projects, there's a lot more to it than just throwing up an audio system or putting a video or lighting system in these spaces. It's working with the architects, working with the general contractors to actually deliver a designed, built, ready to go building. And so a lot of what the clients and churches don't see from a company like ours is the front end process, that process of designing a back and forth with architects, with GCs, and some of that process, along with the AVL process. We want to show you and kind of walk you through how we go about doing that. We're going to start off with a basic floor plan of a church that we've been working on, and kind of walk through some of the questions we ask, some of the things that we look at, and also kind of dive into what those spaces can be, and see how we can guide that overall schematic design and then into construction drawings and the like. I'm going to have Paul kind of kick it off here a little bit with, we're going to do a screen capture or screen share of a program we use some. It's called Vectorworks. This is where we do a lot of this initial dreaming and design. And so I may have Paul describe a little bit about what we've got going on, and Peter and I will kind of all just jump in as we go. This is really how we do the process. We usually are in the same room, but today we're going to do this over video. But it's really just a dialogue. It's not a right and a wrong. It's a what's the best for you, the client, for the church, and things we've seen, experiences we have. So Paul, if you don't mind, maybe explain a little bit of what we've got here and some of the initial things that we saw that were like, hey, have you thought about this, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. So this is a floor plan that we got from a church really early on. So everyone's kind of at a different phase when we start projects with clients. Sometimes we're in the early, we have a kind of idea that we're talking about of building something in the future. Sometimes the building's already built, and everyone realized that we also need to put in some lighting and video in the room too. So the first thing is kind of assess the situation and figure out, where are we in the process? And then what is final in the process? And then what do we have to work with too? Because sometimes we're working with a situation that's already kind of built and done, and we have to just make that the best it can possibly be. And then sometimes there's some flexibility. And this project, we're really early. They actually haven't found an architect yet. They had some early concepts done, and that's what we have here. But there's really nothing set in stone inside the space. So we've got the ability to talk over not just how are we going to light the stage, but what does the stage look like, and what does the space look like, and speak into a lot of those things too. So what we're looking at, this is JB, this is the floor plan that you sent over. It actually was just in a PDF, so I've converted it to just some black lines here in Vectorworks so we can take a look at it. And I scaled it so we can kind of measure across the space too and get a good idea for what we're looking at size-wise and start laying some stuff out. The main spot that we've got to work with is this auditorium. Is that right? I think that's the main thing they wanted us to design, right?
That's correct. And there was a lot of question around the upstage or backstage area. There's a lot of storage. There's a corridor. It was just an initial concept, and so all of it was kind of on the table for us to kind of take a look at.
And the first thing we talked to the client about was the purpose of this room. If this is their main campus, if this is a satellite campus. And JB, do you remember a little bit about that conversation of what their purpose is for this and what they want to do in the space week to week?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually going to become their main, their new main broadcast facility. Currently, they're in a portable-ish setup where they're actually meeting in a school. It's a school auditorium and theater. It's actually a really well built, well done theater space that they're in, but they're still in the setup teardown every weekend. And so the goal of this facility is to have a home base and a place to kind of broadcast to their multiple locations from.
Yeah, I was just going to say, JB, when we first met with them, we had a meeting where we sat down, with this floor plan and kind of started just dreaming some ideas. Would you want to talk a minute of just kind of what that process looks like when we first engage with either with a customer or a client or a new project, like what we do to sort of kick off this schematic design phase?
So we did an initial call where we got to know them, understand who they are, and figure out, kind of what they're trying to do, their big wins, their big whys for what they're doing with this space. The next step, usually beyond that, is what we call programming. It's probably a common term across the industry, but that's where we truly dive in and try and understand specifically what you're trying to do with this space, how you want to use this space, what its purpose is, what it's going to support, and we dive into details like Paul is going to start drawing into. We start asking questions about where things are, why things are the way they are, what things might be a sacred cow, what things might be, hey, we just didn't even think about that, all the way into how many wireless microphones you need, what you're trying to do with, your stage layout so that we have appropriate lighting, where the screens lay out in the space so that we've got good sight lines to all the seats in the room. And it's a really detailed process, but it all begins from the why, understanding the bigger purpose of what you want to do with this space, how you want to do it, and what your expectations are for the space. Because all of that, at the end of the day, we want functioning systems that reach our communities and help us engage with our audiences, but we're also looking for that to be, we don't want it to be cheap, but we want it to be the least expensive solution for that space. We don't want to, spend more money than we need to, because we want to use those dollars to support the ministry and the other things that you guys the churches are doing to reach and support their communities. We've done that process with this organization. We've spent time understanding that piece, what they want to do, asked a lot of these questions. So some of this stuff we'll kind of be able to answer indirectly, but just because we've already done that, because we also want to show you some of this, what Paul's doing right now, some of the bigger questions around the space layout, because so much of that drives what we do from an AVL perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think one of the things you said, as you were explaining all that, that's really, really key to this whole process is, we really want to understand, why we're doing the project. Meaning, yeah, we know that it's a new building or it's a renovation, but what are you trying to do in the space? If you noticed, JB, you didn't say really much of anything about, what speakers do you want? What console do you want? A lot of that comes later because, we live in a time where technology has advanced to a point where at pretty much every price point, you have multiple choices on, equipment and stuff like that. So early on in the process, it's really easy to get bogged down in those details of, I want this console and I want this PA, when in reality, those aren't the most important first decisions. How do you want to use the space? How flexible does it need to be moving forward? How much equipment do you want to add over the years? Or how much do you think your organization is going to change format over the years? And how can we support that? So I think that was great. And I'm glad you mentioned that, JB.
Well, thanks for guiding the process here a little bit, Peter. So Paul, what are some of the things you're thinking about as you draw this stuff? So what are we trying to do right now?
So what I'm looking at is obviously rooms are 3D, but we start with 2D drawings of the spaces. And so what I want to try to do is draw this out in 3D so we can kind of take a look and analyze a few things going on. What we don't have at this point are heights. So I don't know how tall the stage is or how tall the walls are going to be, but we can take some good guesses at this point. And it also gives us a place, since we're early, to speak into some of those things too, because there's maybe some stage heights that work better than others that we'll get to, as we talk through this process. But the first thing I'm doing is just kind of outlining what the drawing has and pulling that up vertically. So we've got a little bit of a model to look at, and then we can stand inside this room and kind of see what we're looking at and see how things feel.
Totally.
And the first thing I noticed, I don't know, we're starting with kind of a wide rectangle, which is kind of a normal, there's really nothing wrong with that shape at all. What is tough to do, the first thing I see when I'm in a space like this is these walls on the side are obviously really flat, and this stage is just around bullnose stage. Honestly, I love a stage a little flat nose to the front of it. I think it makes the stage shape a little more efficient, and it makes the seating a little more efficient. You don't have to do arcs, or you don't have these weird gaps in the seats. If you put the seats out, you can just put a straight row. And to be honest, as the lighting designer, I really like to light a flat downstage edge. Is a lot easier than trying to push the lights up and around the edge of the stage too. It's just a little bit easier to light straight across and keep the light straight across. So one thing I might suggest, and I'm going to cheat here because I've already drawn this in before we started, maybe blunting that stage off a little bit, and we still can have this side view for seating, and along with that is bringing these walls out at an angle might actually make this room feel kind of interesting. So instead of having these walls flat to the audience like this, those walls are typically where we're going to put IMAX screens to see everything. And that screen is going to serve about 45 degrees of people in front of it. And so as you're looking at that screen, if I'm looking at the stage over here and that screen is flat against me on the side, and the screen across the stage is flat against me from the side, the screens are kind of looking away from me. That's kind of our main point of contact with the speaker that's on stage now, is we see their face on the IMAX screens. So if we turn the screens into the audience a little bit, then it feels like that screen's actually kind of facing me across the room. So I sort of want this screen over here to serve the audience across the stage. So when you look across the stage, you're seeing the image over here, and then the same, we'll reflect that on this side, same on this side too. The other thing that does is create a little bit of backstage space for us too. Since we're pushing this wall out and down, we can almost use that angle to create a little bit more of a proscenium and hide things behind this wall, rather than walk up these steps and you're now on stage. We're trying to help make, the other thing I think about when I look at stage is transitions, how you go from like the music section of your service to the speaking section. How, if you want to move drums in and out or change, do anything in those moments, to be as seamless and fluid as possible, and someone walk out and be on stage, not come through a door, walk up some steps or something strange like that. So if we kick those walls in, I think that might actually help. And so compared to where this was before, we could even push it all up stage too if they need some more space for seats and everything. But that gives us a lot of interesting like wing space over here now.
And what's interesting, Paul, is it looks like it's a pretty dramatic change in canting those walls towards the center of the room. But in reality, it doesn't really take up. I mean, it takes up a few seating locations, but it really doesn't affect the majority of the seating location, because there's probably not, even if they were flat, going to be much upstage of that column line that runs horizontally just kind of through the middle of the stage there.
Yeah, because a real seat, to be honest, because if the speaker's out here, you're actually sitting behind the speaker, looking at their back across the room. So it's a really weird. And if you were sitting here too, you see the back of the speaker, and you couldn't really see this screen on the wall. Like you're like,
you don't have a great angle.
It. So yeah, we're kind of collecting some of that bad seating space back and making it usable, like, work storage, green room, whatever, production monitor world, whatever we want to throw back here in this space. I like it a lot, to be honest, the more I've looked at this thing. So as we're drawing this, we're also drawing it in 3D. So here's kind of a look at what we're seeing now. And also, to me, just makes the room feel a little more interesting from the get-go, rather than just, a flat rectangle. When you walk in, these doors on the bottom end here, I think they're really the only main doors.
Hey, I just noticed something. So it looks to me like the stairs might have moved downstage a little bit. Is that, I know we've talked about it internally. What was your reasoning on moving the stairs downstage from their original location?
Oh, yeah. So if we go back to that main view, it's a careful conversation with architects because the room is their project. The building and the space is the architect's deal. So we have to nicely address a lot of these things because there's a lot of other conversations and stuff they're balancing. But when we're early to the process, we can actually suggest a lot. So it's a real easy thing to put steps up against a wall because the handrail can go against the wall. Everything else just makes it easy on stage. And an architect's job isn't really about production. They didn't go to architecture school to learn how to design lights and video and sound systems. So they're not going to think about the stuff that we as production people will think about on a day. for me, when I see this space, and especially if I flip back to 3D, those side walls are also great areas to light with some color or put some scenic stuff on it, or do, it's a canvas, it's a spot and a backdrop. So for me to do that, if I want to uplight these walls, this is out in a walking path and we have steps here. There's really not a good way to make an entrance and light that wall all up against each other. So one thing I really love to do is to pull those steps out away from the wall. And that gives us some sync spots here that we can put set pieces, we can put lighting fixtures to uplight the wall. And it also helps us with cable management. We can maybe put like a floor pocket here, or maybe a wall box right behind this wall for power and data, all the things that we have to do behind the scenes to get all that stuff to work. We can put that here, run the cable along the wall, and we're not crossing this walking path, and we're not crossing this walking path. And it's an easy fix. Those are the things that are really easy to do in a drawing. That's really tough to do way down the road after the drawings are done and that, everything's starting to get built. So those kind of spacings are super convenient. So then we can throw stuff, all on this wall underneath whatever screens we decide to put out here. But if you do notice too, there is nothing back here right now. I actually went ahead and didn't draw any of the walls that are in this drawing because I think now these walls are moved. This gives us a lot of space to rethink what backstage looks like. All the stuff the audience doesn't see, but all the stuff that we as production people need to do what we do.
And to that point though, that's one of the biggest things that I know I end up having conversations with, especially early on in the process, is everybody wants to get down to the floor level off of the stage really fast when you get behind stage. But in reality, if you can bring everything that's backstage up to the stage level, it actually makes for a much more efficient space. You can still create your green rooms, your storage rooms, all your spaces, but you keep it at stage level. It allows you to roll things on and off. It allows you easy access. So all that space and everything that they had accounted for back there, it's not like that went away. We just kind of moved it up to the stage level so that it makes a little bit more sense when you're accessing the stage and that kind of thing.
And you mentioned it earlier, but just the idea of getting involved with an integrator early allows us to make some of these changes. This is not possible to do this level of modeling and suggestive improvements in a project that's about ready to be built. Like if a client waits until they're almost finished designing the building, we're kind of stuck with what we have, and we can make it work, and we do often, but this is definitely a more ideal process. So if you're listening and you're getting ready to start working on a project, earlier is better.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got the model of the rooms, kind of basic shape, which I think is a good start. And anything after this, we'll probably want to talk to, for sure the client. And then once an architect's involved, the other big thing the architect's responsible for is all the, exit safety, local municipal codes for things that, like, I put in some seats just to give us some scale spacing here. I have no idea what their code is as far as like aisle widths and row counts and stuff. So that's where, like, we'll also let the client know as we go, hey, this is an idea of your seats. The architect's going to make this call. Like, they're the ones that are, their names on it, their stamps on, they're responsible for it. But this gives us something good to look at and start to figure out, like, I think the big thing is we'll do screens in here. JB, did they talk about doing a center screen? Like, what kind of teaching model do they do?
I don't think they wanted to do a center screen necessarily for teaching, if I remember correctly, but they were interested in future, potentially like LED wall backdrops and sets and all of those kinds of things.
Okay. Yeah, we could draw something in. That's good for a discussion with them too. So Peter, with something like this, what would you start with for IMAX screens? I'm guessing, a screen on each wall probably, as we normally see in plit spaces.
Yeah. So as I look at the room, there is a formula. So the first thing I'm going to want to know is, like, how far away, like, what's the furthest chair or furthest view, or where's that person sitting in relationship to the screen? And we get a measurement from that. And what we do is that measurement dictates what we would call the furthest viewer. And the formula for, figuring this out, the furthest viewer is 8 times the height of the screen. What we found is that up to 10 times the screen height is acceptable, but we call it, 8 8 times the height is going to be the ideal. So in a situation like this, where you've got your furthest viewer is, I think, roughly about 100 feet is what we measured. So we're going to want the screen to be at least 8 feet tall. And then we'll just play with it. We'll look at it, because there is a little bit of consideration that goes into, this may be technically, like objectively, the perfect size, but inside the room, it might look a little strange. So sort of the next step beyond the formula is, how does it fit in the room? How does aesthetically it work? I mean, there's a little bit of give and take there. Obviously, we're not going to put a screen that's only 5 or 6 feet tall in here. It'd be way too small. But we also don't want to put one that's like 13 or 14 feet tall, because that would be just like ridiculously oversized.
So standard 9x16 screen sounds like it's probably just about right. It hits right between those two sweet spots. So that's a good place to start. How do you figure height on a screen over the stage?
So lower is better, because you remember your audience is going to be sitting down below the stage level, but we also need to make sure that we're keeping unobstructed sight lines. So as a general rule of thumb, I will put a screen, like the bottom edge of a screen, at 7 feet or taller above the stage height. And what that allows is for somebody of, average or slightly above average height to, worship leader, band members, to be standing on stage, be able to raise their hand and not obstruct anybody's view.
All right, so I've got these screens. Let's see here, just to check. All right, we're 10 feet up. Again, we don't have any heights yet. So the biggest thing that we're building off of the stage layer, audio normally is what sets kind of the lowest point for stage. Because, if we want to put subs underneath here, JB, what's kind of our low, because we got to think about, there's subs, but then there's all the structure, like the stage is going to be built around that.
Right.
What do we want to look for in stage?
So we're definitely looking for something that we can, in the effort to create an even low frequency coverage throughout the space, we like to design a horizontal sub array on the ground. So that's going to be, subs on the ground spaced at a certain distance apart. And then it kind of comes down to the kind of the least or the smallest height sub that we can use. So, you're going to have a cavity that's big enough to allow the sub to slide in, but then also to still have the header support. If you're familiar with construction or building, over a door or a window, you've always got a header. Well, that opening where a subwoofer has to go has to have a header or some kind of support, so that the stage is still supported. So let's say average sub is 20, or the smaller subs that we use is 20, 21, 22 inches tall, I think. We've still got to have a little bit of clearance, obviously, so the sub will slide through, and then the support for the stage, which, you've got to work with your structural engineer, the architect, to actually design that. We can kind of come up with some stuff because we've done it enough, but we know we have to give these details to the architect, and then they help us actually design the full structure. So
how much does that change between subs? Are there is it a vast difference, or if we just kind of know, is there a general size that works?
It's not vast. 24 inches is definitely going to be enough. That's a larger, 24 inches tall. They change depth-wise a lot more than that. That's the thing that changes depending on the size of and the power of the sub. A really big sub, it could be, almost 3 feet deep, whereas a standard installation type sub could be 24 inches deep.
2 or 4. How there are different ways to construct a stage, but what do you typically see that stage layer being?
It really depends on if we're going to be driving a lift on that stage or not. Obviously, poured concrete, so a pan with poured concrete that's going to be a few inches thick is preferred, because then, like you said, you can get a lift on those stages, you can drive around. That's the more expensive way to build, to construct a stage. A lot of times, to keep costs down, they'll build it out of steel. So steel construction with usually multiple layers of some kind of plywood, and then a finished surface that gets painted, or a vinyl material, or something similar to that kind of goes on top.
Well, one thing I've seen too, when we're talking about cost, is keeping this upstage part of the stage. So if the audience is here on the right side of the drawing, and the upstage section of the stage is here, that this part is structurally sound for a lift, but this cantilever isn't. And everyone just knows that. There's kind of a line on the stage, like, don't drive to the end, like you'll fall in. So, but it's painted on top where it looks the same.
You're absolutely right. And in those scenarios, a lot of times what we can do, especially early on, that can be designed to be a slab on grade. So everything that's in that rear or upstage part is all on grade. So they backfill with dirt, or they fill in with actual material, so that you're not actually having to build the stage up with concrete. You're building it up with actual ground, actual dirt.
Yeah, structural foam. I've seen a lot of that recently. Instead of the dirt backfill, they've got this super dense foam that's like construct. I mean, they even build roads and bridges out of this stuff. It's crazy. But what's really nice about that product, I've seen, we did one project a couple of years ago with that, and they did a stadium seating section that was all built out of structural foam. The stage support was all built out of structural foam. And this was a more traditional, I don't know, it was a Baptist church, but it had, the platform, a pulpit area, an orchestra area, a choir, and it was all all built out of the structural foam. And then when it came time to place floor boxes, they came in with their hot knife and they just basically cut out all the raceway tracks and the spot for the boxes, dropped them in, and just covered the whole thing in concrete, almost like building a pool.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So yeah, that all ends up being, as there's so many different ways to do this stuff, that what we end up doing really is just asking for what we need and then letting the architect build around that of what they do. So since we're really early, we're not going to know what this is. So I put in 6 inches, and what gave ourselves even a 3-inch gap here, just to, so we got our 2'9" total. That should be pretty safe.
I think that's great. Yeah, that's perfect. Again, we like to be simple. We don't like to dictate to the architects, but we do try and give suggestions. And, once we've designed the PA for this space, we'll know what sub specifically would be going in there. And then we can give very detailed measurements based on that specific sub.
Yep.
And then they can design down to that as needed. But we're still a little early in this process to kind of give that information.
Well, and it goes back to that idea that you spoke about earlier. It's like we are, we're not just partners with the church, but we're partners with the entire construction team. And
right.
When we can approach it from that aspect or that viewpoint, that we're not here to tell the architect what to do. We're not here to tell anybody what to do, but just give like these. This has been our experience. These have been the issues we've run into, and it makes the working relationship with the entire project team a lot easier when everybody knows, like, hey, we're all fighting for the same goal. We're all on the same team. The architect doesn't, roll his eyes every time we pick up a phone and call them. It's like, okay, these guys are here to help.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So we're not quite at 7. So it's a little over 7 feet over the stage.
Yep.
So that means somebody can walk up these stairs, because we can still decide later if we want this to be projection or LED, or that can be a conversation, whatever that turns into. LED obviously is easier. We don't have to worry about people crossing projector plane, but why make it complicated if we have to go back to projectors later? Let's leave that clear.
Absolutely.
I think that works great. And
great.
It's really got that. So if you get in that side seat, that screen is still pretty easy to look at. So we'd see the speaker here, and then right over them, we've got this really nice screen that's kind of turned out even across the room over there. And then once we get the center, we kind of flip to the other side.
So moving a little higher out to kind of the layout of the space. One thing I didn't notice on your drawing yet, Paul, was like a production space, front of house space, where, what kind of layout do we look at when we kind of help design that space?
So when we're having conversations with the client, well, we got to fit everything that they need for front of house. So when you talk to them, what's their normal Sunday like? Are they running? How much stuff are they running in the room? How much stuff do they want to run in a control room backstage?
Right.
And cameras, usually, if we have some center camera positions, what all do they do for that?
So I think with this client, we are designing. We're designing their first true kind of broadcast facility, and it's broadcast in. It's not a, a newsroom or anything, but we are going to have audio, lighting, probably a producer, at least 2 cameras at the front of house position. But then I think we would guide them to create a production space in the back that is engineering, rack rooms, video switching, shading, all of the elements that require a little bit more communication and a little bit more maybe distractions. We would want to keep those out of the space, out of front of house, and maybe backstage. Another reason why we kind of level out the stage in the back, all the backstage space that allows us to create some custom rooms to put this equipment. Oh, well, look at that. It's like you almost had it drawn already, Paul.
Ta-da! I'm gonna pull that cake right out of the oven.
You are the fastest drawer ever.
What's nice about having 25 years of projects in the bin that we can go back to is going through a description of what's worked and not worked for other clients that are similar to. And so knowing this is actually copy paste from another client that does almost the exact thing with some changes. So the height of this has changed a little bit. It's changed, the space, but they've loved this front of house for what they do. So it's a good starting block that we can present to this client too. It's like, hey, this is working great. And then make some changes. Maybe we need some more space for a second assistant producer, or maybe we don't need a producer spot here, or but it's, it becomes as easy as, hey, we've done this before. And so we have a good starting place to kind of compare some things to. So what this has is we've got audio here on the side. I've got a section for a producer, which in this case means it's kind of like the service caller. They're looking at planning center. They're going to be talking on, so they need intercom communication to everybody in the space to talk to people backstage and band, but also be able to, if you're mixing front of house, you don't want to wear a headset because that kind of defeats the purpose. So it's nice for them to sit right next to the audio engineer so they can just lean over and say, hey, by the way, we're going to do a new song. You didn't know it's coming, but I do, So we kind of throw them right in the middle, and then lighting over here on the left.
And so we've got the cameras. Is that stage height then, the height that we put the cameras at back there?
Let me check, because we actually just changed that to 2.9. So it's a little bit lower. So 2.6. Now it is. So yeah, what that does is, let's see here, put those at 2.9 as well. Boop. All right, so that gives a little camera riser back here. Because Peter, we want the lens of the camera at eye level, right? Like right
exactly.
here,
Yeah.
to line up straight across the room.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of flexibility. If you have to choose one way or the other, like a degree or two above stage level is okay. Probably a degree below stage level is okay, but not too much. Eye level is really what we're looking for. The platform height, the actual camera platform height, doesn't matter as much as the lens being eye level with the speaker. So we could bring the platform level down a little bit, just knowing that our operators are going to be, standing and looking up at their, viewfinder. Or we could do the same thing in reverse, where the platform's actually higher than stage height, and then the cameras are lower and sort of in more of a seated position than standing up. So either way works. But yeah, you're exactly right. The lens at eye level is kind of key.
And it also helps being a stage height. If somebody stood right in front of this and the stage is this high, camera's still going to shoot across the audience rather than, have Mystery Science Theater happen. Let's see. I've got some cameras in here, video ground set up too. And we can talk to them too about how many and where and what's kind of a standard camera package to present to them from, without having too much more conversation at this point. What do we normally start with?
So again, this kind of goes back to the first step is measuring the camera distance to the speaker. And, at that point we have a conversation with the client, like what's the typical shot that you're getting? And, most clients you're going to say, well, our pastor for the majority of his message is going to be in a medium shot, which is, kind of maybe just above the elbows, sort of like a wider bust shot. And then what we look at is the different lenses that are available. What's the smallest lens that we can get that shot with? Not at the very end of the lens. We want to kind of pull it back. So maybe we'll choose a lens that at 80% of its total zoom, it'll give us that shot that we're looking for. Lenses are really expensive. It's always shocking how much it costs. So in this room, it's not as big a deal because the overall depth, front to back is not dramatic. But a lot of churches we work in are, looking at, 80 to 110 feet from the stage. And that is a long, long way to shoot.
Peter, when you're talking about cameras, obviously lenses kind of are what they are. It's based on the distance, how far you are away, the shots you want to get. What about cameras? Like what if I tell you I want, I'm putting you on the spot, but I want the cinematic look, or I want the whatever look. I know that's a conversation that comes up a lot. How do we normally broach that subject?
We're not in a position where we want to tell a client, this is what you have to do. But we do want to educate. And you're right. We have the conversation about cinema camera versus, studio camera all the time. And what we want to do is first of all, define what it is when they say we really like that cinematic look. It's like, okay, what does that mean really? Is it the shallower depth of field? Is it the frame rate look that you like? Is it the sort of desaturated like HDR color space, the sort of that non-graded like pre-production sort of look to it? Like, and then a lot of times that's a difficult question to answer. So often an easy follow-up question to that is, who do you look at? Like when you're looking online at churches or not even churches, just anything, when you're looking at something, say, hey, I want to be that, like I want our image to look like that. Who is that? And then we'll go look at that and we'll see how we can recreate that. Most of the look, the cinematic look, a lot of times people refer to the answer we get is it's the depth field or that shallow depth of field that we really are after. It's a lot of people like that 24p frame rate, but it's more about the depth of field and the color space that when we start talking to clients, that's what equates to that cinematic look. And so then we have a conversation about, okay, well, what are the trade-offs between a broadcast camera, like a studio configured type camera and a cinema camera? What are the pros and cons of each? I'm not going to go into all that here, but we just have conversations about all that. What are you getting into? What are the problems you're going to experience with either? I mean, there's no like right or wrong answer. There's pros and cons to both. And so as long as the client understands the trade-offs, they can make a really informed decision. I will say that more often than not, when we have this conversation, we do end up still living in the studio camera world, for whatever that's worth. That seems to be the trend right now. But we are doing a few projects that are just all cinema.
Very interesting.
Just one more thing about lenses. Early on in this construction project, this is a really shallow room, but there are rooms that are really deep. And placing the cameras, specifically the center cameras, can be a really good thing or detrimental thing to the budget based on where they're placed. So we'll have conversations with clients early on, a lot of times saying, hey, if the cameras are 110 feet away, like you're looking at lenses that are, maybe $100,000 a piece. But if there's a way that we can configure the seating area that we can move them halfway forward, now you're looking at a lens that costs like a quarter of that to get that same shot. And sometimes churches will make that decision, and sometimes they'll be like, no, the seating layout has to be what it is. But again, it's having the information and being able to make a good choice with that information.
The next step with a client, I would say, is we just leave it like this and just note, hey, we're thinking maybe storage here, maybe some green room space here, but knowing that the architect may need to use some of this space up for a ramp, or we may need to put a ramp over here, however they want to do that. So say just what you were saying, like we can just call out this area for right now. We do know some minimums though. There are some things that we do need to hand the architect and say, hey, we really, to do a room this size, like, I don't know, what do you think? Probably 4 racks in the video room is probably, going to be enough for our equipment. We can figure out what that equipment is later, but we know that we need the physical space for, 4 racks across or 2 by 2, however that works.
Well, and that translates into clearances as well. So I did a lot. I didn't change the size of their room. I don't think this project is going to need a total of 8 racks, but there's space for 8 racks in there, which is
that's a ton.
Which is great. Yeah. So
yeah,
this room can be adjusted a good bit. We could put a 3rd row in the control room and sort of push the rack room wall down to where it's just 4 and 4 on either side. We could leave it just 1 and put a little, workbench type area. Again, these are things where once we get a concept down and we can show that to the client, it's a lot easier for them to visualize and make decisions. It's really hard in the course of just a sit down meeting to say, what do you want? What do you need? And expect them to just give every list out everything that is potentially going to need to be in one of these rooms. But if we start with this visual and say, like, what do you think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? It's way easier to say, let's move this, let's change this, because it's visual at that point.
I'm going to try something live without your permission and see if this works.
That's all quite
right.
All right.
What if we put a door here? Let me see if I can just pop a new door in this wall. Since I didn't know, what's so nice too about drawing this stuff in the plan is, as much as I look at floor plans every single day, I sometimes still don't get a sense of scale just by looking at lines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys are the same way, but as soon as you put those racks in, I'm like, oh, there's 8 racks. That's a big equipment room.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily need all that space. because honestly, this isn't a huge room. We could, easily get away with 4 racks. So if we did something like this, and then let me see if I can draw another wall, maybe this way, and open this wall up.
Oh, I see what you're doing. You're just turning the whole thing 90
yeah,
degrees.
and so then there we go. Do this. Then we give the band, we rotate the band's room 90 degrees too. So the band has the same amount of room they have, and they have the backstage access. They can go straight to, because that's where they need to go every time. They're going to need to leave their rehearsal space and go straight on stage. We don't need to give them a door anymore. So we can do some kind of door into that. And then we could put a door straight to the worship center though. And I'm sure there's some kind of distance that has to be kept with our, architect help. But adding something like this, I don't know. It's a little inefficient because now we have a hallway, but we could figure out some other way to do these racks, maybe tighten this up, give us some more room. But now we have direct access backstage and to the worship center. And we give the bandwidth they're looking for too somehow. I had to, not exact, but it might be an idea to talk to them about.
Yeah,
this is nice. We're actually getting like our day job done while we're recording a breakout session. It's fantastic. What kind of positions do you think about when you look at a studio like this, Peter?
So one of the first questions I always ask is like, how do you run your service? There's a number of churches out there that, maybe more than a number, that the person running the switcher is also the director. In that case, we want to take that into account. We want to put the switcher kind of right in the, front and center. And then there's other, what we might call a more traditional broadcast model where there's a switcher, there's a person operating the switcher, and there's a separate director. In that instance, we still want the director to be front and center. And so we'll push the video switcher off to one side. I usually like the right side, as you're looking at the counter, the right side. But again, these are just preferences and workflow things that that we would go over with the client. Typically, graphics in the back row, at least 2 machines, sometimes 3 or even more. Oftentimes, or I really shouldn't even say oftentimes, majority of the time, we'll do a camera shading position. Normally, we put that on the front row. It's pretty typical in a broadcast environment or, TV truck, like camera shading is completely separated. It's in a whole nother room. It's like back in the back in the noise, the noisy rack room. In our world, it doesn't work real well in that type of arrangement because, while Sunday we may have a full staff of people, oftentimes there's weddings and funerals and all sorts of other events that happen, in our rooms during the week that we don't have the luxury of having a full crew, and having camera shading on the front row right next to either the director or the switcher operator, something where it's accessible and really one person could run the whole show. We take that into account as well when we're laying these rooms out. So the one thing I do really pay attention to when I'm laying out a control room is who needs to look at what. And so in this model, you saw when we were looking at the 3D view, there's 2 rows of multi-view. There's basically like two upper TVs, 2 bottom TVs. The bottom are going to be for the people in the front row. They're set low, about 4 feet off the ground. So they're really designed to be utilized by the people in the front row, whereas the top 2 monitors are going to be graphic sources and other things that are monitored more occasionally or from the back row. Try to keep computer monitors to a minimum at the front row because they would obstruct view. So really think about the tools that everybody needs and where they need to sit.
I think something like that could be interesting. And it's a little inefficient to have this hallway here, but I sort of like having that direct stage access because that, to me, week to week, just having been on staff at a church, when you can go from your office or where you work directly and you don't have to take the mile-long walk around and up and to, and it's so much nicer on everybody. But really I think the biggest job that we have through the whole process is trying to make sure expectations between budget and then functional aesthetic expectations all match. And so knowing early, like a target of where everybody wants something to be also helps because we're trying to really talk early about budgets too, just to make sure we're not from the get-go, we're not going into opposite directions. So a big thing with that kind of style, if we're talking about the, Hillsong kind of thing, is we want to make sure people are lit really well. And we're talking about broadcast in this, cameras in this spot too. So we want to take care of people's faces really well. But that gets into what this area back behind everybody looks like. And it's going to be a few conversations creatively with the church team of what that looks like, what we can afford, and then allowing for expansion later. Because, again, when you look at something, if you base, hey, what we want to do is this last tour I saw in an arena, there's no way, or for one, it's not practical in a normal space. It's going to look crazy, but there's no way the budget's going to match that. But what we can do is make sure that it's easy to expand year over year. There's no rule saying you have to have everything day one. It's easy to buy a couple more lights here and there, but we want to make sure that there's power, there's data, that it's easy to just add 5 more lights this time. And maybe you buy this Christmas instead of rent some things, and the room itself can support it super easy. The expensive stuff is trying to run new conduit later and new power later. And I think we've all been on staff at places with older buildings, and that's really what you run into. Sometimes that's the deal breaker in trying to expand your system 5 or 10 years is the space itself can't support it. Weight, like rigging conversation. We want to talk about how much weight we want to hang, not day one, but like eventually, what do we want to hang up here? Adding more steel later to a room is very expensive. So those are the conversations coming up next that I'll start by drawing out just some basic positions like, hey, here's where backlight would look great. And here's where front light will look great on people. But then we'll start to drill into more ideas of what exactly we're looking for and what we can afford day one in the space too. I also like to do, it's pretty affordable, like to throw in some color accents around walls. One big conversation in installations is, do we do color house lights or not? Color house lights look great, but it's also, again, it's a budget thing. So instead of having a choice, I hate going into a meeting with an all or nothing, like, well, you can do house lights or you can't. I'd rather say, well, here's maybe 3 options we can step back to, So, hey, that would look great to have every light in the room be able to change color. But if they can't, here's 2 or 3 other ways that we can kind of do that less and less and less. It's not just like, well, now it's boring, So one way is one of the says we can throw some lights just around the perimeter of the room real easy. And that can be, they don't have to be high performance fixtures. They can be some lower end, almost a DJ LED light if you want to. Just make sure it doesn't flicker on camera, and we'll probably be okay. If it's doing a nice blue or red on the wall, that can look great. Same with some of the audience stuff. Maybe we just do a few, spread out theatrical fixtures that do some audience light, but we don't have to cover the entire space. Like audience light actually has to follow code. We have to cover enough of the room with, enough foot candles for emergency. And with an extra system on top of it, we don't have to play by those rules. We can just be selective and just throw some splashes of color here and there. So those will be some of the next conversations as we start to drill into the project of what kind of support we need up here for that.
So when you're in a room like this, are we looking at fixed positions for your like front light and backlight positions? So is that some kind of pipe or truss, or how do we normally look at that?
Normally we start with just static lighting pipe out over the house. In this case, there's temporary seats and it's real easy just to use a lift. And I doubt these walls are going to be over, the positions probably won't be 25 feet in the air, maybe. So that's really easy to get to. If there's other challenges, we can talk through those, but that's the most affordable way to do that. Another factor we haven't talked about much on this call, but what's different in a building install versus like, say, installing a set for the week is the labor isn't volunteers. And so everything that happens in this room not only has the cost of the equipment, but it's at the cost of the person behind it who's doing the thing. So like a plumber can hang Schedule 40 pipe for lights, and it's not that expensive. But if we have to call a rigging company, certified riggers who can stamp off on attaching truss, motors, all that kind of stuff to a room, not only is the equipment more expensive, but the people who are certified to do that in the space are more expensive too. And there are reasons to use that, and there's a lot of reasons we can, get into on a project. But with this space, as flat and simple as the room is, honestly, the most affordable thing is going to be to do static pipe. And it's not super glamorous, but
it gives us more budget in other places to do other things that, no one on Sunday morning really knows that if your truss can come up and down over the audience, or do they really care? But we can put that to something that does matter, like making the screens look really great, or that camera lens that maybe we need to have a great camera lens for that center camera. We can put it something like that everyone is going to see and use. And holistically, we can talk about how that budget works through the whole project. But I don't know that in this space we need to spend it on the front light position. I think pipes can be fine.
Were there any other lighting specific requirements that we had to address with them? I mean, obviously we get into fixture counts and all that kind of stuff, but once we've designed that infrastructure, like you're talking about, fixtures kind of are what they are. It's you need this many to cover the space. You may want this many wash lights, this many spot fixtures. That is one of those things that we kind of iterate through the value engineering budgeting process. Is there anything more to it at this point that you think we need to address? I mean, I feel like we've hit a lot of it, but
yeah, not really. It's after this, it's such an early stage. We really get into just more conversations about what happens on the stage on a Sunday. We'll go end to end with a system of wash lights for somebody to speak with, but then how many singers in the band, how many band members in the band behind them, how do we want to light them, and what does that look like? There's so many different ways to take that. That we'll kind of reverse engineer where the fixtures need to go based on how we want that stage to look. And, if there's seating pieces or not. If there's a big LED wall, we don't need to worry so much about lighting curtain and set pieces if there's a big video piece. So they all kind of, as we talk through the design of the project, that'll all kind of fall into place.
I think the last thing we've got to talk about is, the audio system. That's what every great church production guy loves, is the audio system. I may disappoint everyone just a little bit in this call is, we talked a little bit about the subwoofers early on because that specifically dictates the way we build and construct the stage. So that is something we want to talk about early, but that doesn't matter what manufacturer it is. It doesn't matter, if it's point source, if it's line array, all of those things, not that they're irrelevant. There are specific use cases for each kind of space. And we would take a space like this, look at, what kind of distance we have to look at, what kind of widths we have to look at, and then figure out what kind of PA kind of fits that. And that, could be anything from using a piece of software from a specific speaker manufacturer or programs like Ease. We're going to use those programs to actually design the speakers to cover the space evenly. We don't just throw up, a couple speakers and hope it works. We spend a lot of time accurately modeling these loudspeaker systems, along with the acoustic properties of the space. Everybody thinks, oh man, I bought this amazing whatever PA and I'm going to have an amazing sound now. But we sometimes fail to realize that acoustics are maybe even a little bit more heavily weighted towards the quality of your sound in a space. Mm-hmm. Everybody's put a PA in a gym and knows how bad it can actually sound. So if we don't actually treat a space like this, we're going to run into the same thing. So we're going to look at, different reflection points, to the second, third, fourth order reflections in these spaces. What do we need to do to the ceiling? What's the ceiling construction look like? The ceiling has a lot to do with your low mid frequency buildup in a space. So do we need to tame that down? Are we looking at wanting to create a more engaging, a more reverberant sound that comes back towards the audience? So we can look at things like acoustic clouds that reflect the congregational worship back towards the congregation, and it gives it a little bit more of a lively sound without over exciting the room. Don't necessarily want to walk into a worship space and it be like a tight closed studio, really all the sound gets sucked out of it. You want it to be live and have energy so that you feel like you're a part of something. And these are all elements that we pay attention to and we look at, and we kind of have to decide what you, the client, are looking for, what your expectations are, and then decide, where we kind of spend those dollars. But acoustics are definitely one of the first things that we really want to pay attention to. Obviously loudspeakers, but what brand doesn't really matter to me at this point. It's, are we controlling the space acoustically? And then we just design the space around that from there. We take in, preferences that you may have, and design with those kinds of thoughts in mind. Guys, like I said, I did kind of rush through that because I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about the kind of different side of the AVL design process, which I think we've we've done, talking about room layouts and how we interact with the architects and the general contractors, and where that balance kind of flows from. I guess the only thing I didn't mention, a company like us, is we actually are going to deliver drawings. When you work with a company like us, we deliver drawings that look like what the architect draws, or looks like what the electrical designers, the MEP designers. It's our drawings coordinate directly with their drawings, so that it can all be inserted into one construction drawing set, and that's what they build your building from. And that's I think another big value. You're working with a company like ours. We're going to be that go-between. We're going to make that communication happen. We're not going to make you do that. It's nothing that you have to do. That's just a part of what the value that we kind of bring to the table. Guys, before we wrap it up, is there any last minute thoughts on your end, or anything you guys wanted to mention?
I just want to reiterate kind of what you say, is that the idea of one, getting in early, like working with someone early, making sure everybody's on the same team, and making sure that, from the early on discussions, you kind of want to start like broad and sort of zero in on the details. It's really easy for us, tech guys, to start for the very first conversation. Like, I like this console, I like this camera, and I like these lenses, and I like these light fixtures, like, because we all have those, we have the things that we like, and then we have there's that list of stuff that you wish you could work on, but you haven't had the chance yet. And a lot of times that list ends up being the first pass of like, yeah, this is the system I want. So we try to very intentionally stay away from, make, model, that sort of discussion, and talk about what are your needs, what are your wants, how do you want this space to function when you start? And then how do you anticipate using the space maybe 5-10 years down the road?
That's absolutely good. And hopefully that's come across in this conversation, everyone, that, we almost purposefully stayed away from a lot of the really fine details. We haven't talked to brands or manufacturers or anything, because so much more of what these systems are that high level, that big picture, thinking through the infrastructure, thinking through the layouts. That is so much more important than what speaker manufacturer you have, what microphones you have, what lighting, as we've said. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to join us, to listen with us, let us ramble a little bit. And I really hope you've learned something, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.